Does that make Mishi or Kushi holy because he's able to do tricks? No. Some people are able to harness certain forces. Those forces may or may not be holy. In this case, I'm almost certain that they're not holy. There's a guru who my friend Gil Locke studied under almost 35 years ago. This man had 35 million adherents. Is he holy? H, no. The man abuses little boys. His followers live in abject poverty while he indulges in all the luxuries of life. He has powers. He can manufacture diamonds. He can manufacture jewelry with a snap of his finger. He's able to get it from some spiritual reservoir, some place, and he's able to manufacture and bring it into this world, into the realm of the observer. Does that make him holy? Definitely not. He meditates. He can meditate almost all day, maybe all day. Maybe he doesn't sleep. Maybe he eats little. Does that make him holy? No, it doesn't make him holy, because holiness depends upon the purity of one's motives. In order to reach holiness, you must first be in a state of purity. Purity means removed from selfishness, removed from focus on ego, removed from anger, removed from frustration, happy and positive, and recognizing that all is good, for all comes from God. And only in that process can a person reach this exalted stage of holiness. There's been discussions as to who is a saint, and some of the criteria of sainthood is miracles happening. Is a miracle a criteria? The answer is no. For miracles can be the manipulation of the forces that lie within this world. And why does God give the power of miracles to certain people? Well, maybe they follow certain procedures and are able to go with certain parts of the program. There's a physical program and a spiritual program. And these people went along the spiritual program and bested it. But that didn't make them holy people. Holiness requires proper motive and proper action. How do you know what is the proper motive and the proper action? Again, we must turn to the holy Maimonides, Rabbi Moses ben Maimon, who tells us the following. In order to be holy, you must understand and cling to God, who is the creator of all, who is the wisdom of all things, who is the source of all things, and see the unity of God within everything. And only then can a person approach holiness. But this is an intellectual and a spiritual involvement that requires several steps. The first of which is to become a master of your heart, of your motives. How do you become a master of your motives? That's found, buried in Parshas Kedoshim. It says, you shall be holy. What's the first commandment we get? A person should fear his mother and his father. How does fearing your father and your mother got to do with holiness? But then you have to ask yourself, why should you fear your mother? Your mother's a little woman. She's about 5'1", 5'2", weighs about 130 pounds soaking wet. Maybe, sometimes she's 100 pounds. And you're a big 6'2", 200-pounder. You're not afraid of your dad either. He's got 25, 30 years on you. You're at the top of your game. You're not afraid of your dad either. Why does the Torah say, fear your mother? I mean, love your mother, honor your mother, cherish your mother. Right before Mother's Day. How could this be a commandment? The answer is, you don't fear them because of what they can do to you. You fear them because God has invested your soul through them. And you're afraid not of them, but the power of God that came through them and still comes through them to you. There's a connection between them and you. And the fear that you have is supposed to be the fear that you give someone who you are afraid of because of his great position in life. Who do you fear out there? Do you fear President Obama? I don't think so. But you would fear a mafia don because he can kill you. You would fear a biker with a chain and a lock if you've got no weapon. Would you fear a great scholar, a great holy person? Some of you would, others wouldn't. That depends on your sensitivity to fear. Fear comes because you know that this person is above you and has powers over you. That's why you fear that person. So the Torah tells us, treat your parents as if they had the power of life and death over you, because they were God's agents. God has got the power of life and death over you. And by learning to fear your parents, because God's power went through them, guess what? You learn to be aware that God is everywhere, weighing and measuring your motive. Now, some people think that if they have a good time and they're sitting and relaxing and eating anash, that somehow or other they're doing something bad because they're not really being holy and spiritual and functional. But the Torah tells you that's not what God is about. God is not about you losing your identity and making yourself into a robot, a Jew-bot. God wants you to do things, to be positive, and do things for the right reason and the right motive. How can you learn to do things for the right motive if you do the mitzvot, the commandments, because God has commanded them to you? Not because you're afraid of the Don. You're not afraid of the Don. If you had a bigger gun than him, you really wouldn't be afraid of him. God commanded us to fear goodness, to fear holiness, to fear righteousness, to have the right blend of the right kind of emotion. If you have the right blend of emotion, then you will not fear people who are just gangsters. You will not be intimidated by people who've got more money and power than you, because you stand for the truth and you stand up to lies and evil. You're not stupid. You don't go in front of a gun and you don't go ahead and fight with a gangster openly. But you retain your principles and you retain your character, and you're not intimidated by them to change anything about yourself. And the power of being an example for the right reason is the most powerful thing on earth. And that's the commandment. The commandment is, if you will learn to do things for the right reason, you fear your parents. You don't fear them physically. You fear them because God has been their partner in you. And you fear the godliness that's associated with them. And you fear violating the relationship that God has invested them with you. And so when you learn to fear things because of their importance, their character, their content, when you're afraid of doing a sin, not because you're afraid of somebody's going to ostracize you, but because you don't want the consequences of being embarrassed when God appears to you, when Mashiach comes, then you will do things for the right reason. And then you will become holy.